What is up, NFL fans? Welcome back to another episode of the NFL Whip Round. I'm Jeff Hartman, joined by Coach Kevin Smith. Coach, what's up?
What's up, Jeff? How are you?
I'm doing great. It's getting hot. I love the summer. Are you getting ready for your trip to Latrobe?
I am starting to gear up for that, plan that out. That's going to coincide with my son's AAU basketball, which is out in central Pennsylvania somewhere. So that's become an annual vacation for us. It's been really nice.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to hearing about that. A lot of NFL teams are reporting to training camp this week, if not this week, next week. I know some rookies are always coming into town early, but everyone is talking early this week about ESPN. They are the kings of content. They like to stir the pot. They like to get people pissed off, and they want people talking about their content. Like we are doing right now as we start off the show, analyzing lists. Everyone loves lists, like nice itemized numerical lists, top 10, top 5, top 100, as the NFL Network is doing. But everyone's talking about ESPN's top 10 quarterbacks for 2025. This is something Jeremy Fowler does every year, and it's according to NFL executives, coaches, and scouts. Before we even get to the list, Coach, what are your thoughts on these lists?
Well, if it comes from executive coaches and scouts, I'll pay attention a little bit more because their perspective, I think, is a little more valid than if it's just some commentators or some fan poll or something like that. So, I mean, I do put a little more stock in the list we're going to talk about here.
Before we go, what about the NFL's top 100? Now that is voted on.
Too many people.
Outside of that, but that's voted on by their peers. So players are voting. You give any credence to that? Because I feel like there's going to be some beefing going on. I play for the Steelers. I'm not voting for a Raven. Do you think that gets in the way?
100%. Okay. I think they vote for their friends more, or the guys that they share an agent with, or that they worked out with,
went to college with.
Yeah, and what are you going to do? You're going to haggle over they got him at 72. There's no way he should at least be 65. I mean, that's way too much for me to process.
But I'm not going to pretend and not going to lie to the listeners out there or viewers if you're watching on YouTube that I'm not someone that loves this top 100 list. I love the little videos of when they talk about the players. And for instance, Cam Hayward came in at 83. And so I've watched that one. And, seeing guys that go up against Cam Hayward, and they're like, man, I don't know how this guy's still so strong at his age. And he's just it is pretty cool to see those videos. I'm not going to lie. But let's talk about the top 10 quarterback list. And I'm just going to read it from 10 to 1. And then let's dissect it, Coach. So number 10, they have Tampa Bay quarterback Baker Mayfield. Number 9, Super Bowl champion Jalen Hurts, Super Bowl MVP. Number 8, Jared Goff. Number 7, Justin Herbert. Number 6, Matthew Stafford. Number 5, Jaden Daniels. 4, Lamar Jackson. 3, Joe Burrow. 2, Josh Allen. And numero uno, Patrick Mahomes. Coach, what do you think about that? I saw some issues there.
Yeah, so I have a couple thoughts on this. One, that top 4, I think, is the undisputed top 4. I don't think you could include anybody else in that top 4. And I agree with Mahomes at number 1 because of the Super Bowls. How you want to arrange 2, 3, and 4, I got no issue with that. You want to call Burrow 2 and Allen 3 and whatever. I think those are the top 4 guys. I think Mahomes is number 1. And then you can argue all you want over who's 2, 3, and 4. And then I think you get to the next level. Jalen Hurts is not number 9. Jalen Hurts is constantly disrespected, in my opinion, or undervalued because he doesn't look like a traditional quarterback, because he doesn't put up the numbers that some of these quarterbacks do. But to have Jared Goff and Justin Herbert and Jaden Daniels above Jalen Hurts, to me, is ridiculous, man. That dude's been to 2 Super Bowls. He just won the Super Bowl. They steamrolled the Chiefs. He was the MVP of the Super Bowl. I mean, he's just, everywhere he's gone, he's just won. That's all he does is win. But I think that there's this sense that, you could plug anybody into that system, or if you put him on another team, he wouldn't be as good. So I have a big issue with them putting him all the way down at number 9.
Is there anything Jaden Daniels does better than Jalen Hurts at this stage of his career?
He looks better. He looks more like your traditional quarterback. He's a little more fluid. He's got a little bigger arm. But my gosh, sensational rookie year. Let's not take anything away from the young man. But you can't be that high after 1 year, because we saw what happened with C.J. Stroud. He had a phenomenal rookie year, And then last year, he kind of regressed a little bit. The league caught up to him a little bit. And now this year will be the year where he has to prove if he's a true top 10 quarterback. So I got to wait at least a year on Jaden Daniels before I'm willing to put him that high.
One of the biggest issues I had is where Justin Herbert is. And Justin Herbert has never won a playoff game. Correct me if I'm wrong. And he's dealt with injury. And so he's been in and out of the lineup. Last year as a high ankle sprain, I think. I just don't. I understand Justin Herbert has the physical tools that you would think for a prototypical NFL quarterback. He's big, strong, mobile, good arm. But coach, like, how do you put him above someone that was a Super Bowl MVP last year?
I don't know. And when I look at that list and I see Mahomes and Allen and Burrow and Jackson, and as Steelers fans, those guys have carved up the Steelers.
Yes.
What's Justin Herbert ever done to the Pittsburgh Steelers? I mean, Pittsburgh beats the Chargers routinely. And Justin Herbert doesn't scare me at all. I look at some of the other guys on that list. I mean, Jalen Hurts carved up the Steelers in that game in Philadelphia. And you can make excuses if you want. Oh, well, he's got A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. And blah, blah. Well, I don't care what he has, man. I mean, the results speak for themselves.
Absolutely. Now, there was a lot of people that were upset because in the article, if you actually just looked at the article that was on ESPN, they actually showed the lowest ranking and the highest ranking for these players, these coaches, execs, and scouts. And someone had Lamar Jackson as number 6. And people were just up in arms. How in the hell do you think Lamar Jackson is number 6? He is tough to gauge here. Joe Burrow has been to a Super Bowl. Josh Allen, MVP. Lamar Jackson, MVP. Patrick Mahomes, well, we know his resume. I think Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow are really difficult. Like you said, you could put them in any order, but if you had to have a criteria to rank them, what would that be?
Well, I think postseason success is a significant indicator of, for a quarterback anyway, your greatness. When you talk about the all-time list, and we had this discussion recently about
last week.
You almost you have to have a ring to be in that conversation. And I think Lamar Jackson has played some of his worst football in the postseason. Josh Allen's been really good in the postseason. He just hasn't been able to slay, the Kansas City Dragon. And like you said, Joe Burrow's been to a Super Bowl, and he's played for a Cincinnati team that treats defense like it's something you do while you're waiting to get the ball back. So they haven't exactly committed to building a full roster. So I'm okay with putting Lamar Jackson number 4 there.
All right. Any other issues with anyone that was left off the top 10?
I was glad to see Matthew Stafford be included, and specifically that high. I think he's a guy who, even though he has a Super Bowl ring, still flies under the radar a little bit. I think he's a little better than he gets credit for.
I think so too. And when you get to like 10, everyone's it's splitting hairs. Yep. Baker Mayfield's in. Some might say Aaron Rodgers, even though he didn't play well last season, or as well as most would expect, should still have the respect to be in the top 10. I think you're splitting hairs at that point. But there you have it, the top 10 quarterbacks. This is according to ESPN, so take that with a giant grain of salt. Let's go around the league and other news and notes. I was stunned when I saw that the Chicago Bears extended GM Ryan Poles through 2029, despite the fact that the Bears are 15-36 with 2 last-place finishes with Poles as the general manager. Why do you think they would give him such a significant extension? I was baffled, Coach. I got to be honest.
I'm assuming, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm assuming that this is a reward for landing Ben Johnson, who was the big fish in the coaching pond this offseason. But this is the same Ryan Poles who hired Matt Eberflus, whose time in Chicago was a disaster.
Yep.
I was just doing a podcast on Monday where I was talking about equating a head coach to being a gardener and how you have to constantly weed your garden. And Matt Eberflus was kind of like the epitome of a coach who didn't do that and then lost his locker room. So that was curious to me. I mean, Ryan Poles is fairly young, and he's got a good resume for a young guy. Maybe they see in Chicago the need for stability. They've had a ton of turnover both in the front office and with the coaching staff, and maybe landing Ben Johnson, they said, all right, now Ben Johnson's here. We have our quarterback, Caleb Williams. We have our head coach, Ben Johnson. Let's give Ryan Poles the extension and see if we can build something.
I just don't get it. This is the guy that traded a second-round draft pick for Chase Claypool. And that turned into the first pick of the second round that turned into Joey Porter Jr. for the Pittsburgh Steelers. This guy has fumbled a lot of decisions. And now granted, this is not a player contract. If after this year they just see all these players that he has tried to acquire just completely fall flat on their face, they can fire him. And yes, they'll have to deal with the financial aspect that he was under contract, et cetera, but it doesn't impact the salary cap. So we can't look at it from a player salary, player contract perspective. I just think that Ryan Poles, when you just bring in Ben Johnson, I get the stability thing. But if Ben Johnson, after a year, says, this guy's not it, meaning Ryan Poles isn't the guy, you would want to move on and get someone that he can really mesh with. But I guess you have to love Ben Johnson. That was a huge get for the Bears. Unless Caleb Johnson takes a huge step back this year, I don't know. Like, it just didn't seem like the right time for me to give this guy an extension. But I do understand wanting to do the continuity route and making sure that you take care of your own.
Stealing Ben Johnson from the division rival Lions was a huge deal. And I don't think anybody felt he was going to land in Chicago. So that's the only logic I can really think. I mean, you extended him through 2029. I mean, I could see like, all right, so you give him an extra year and now you extend him through 2027. But he's through the end of the decade. That's a big extension. So they obviously feel good about it.
Well, let's talk about general managers as a whole, because the Pittsburgh Steelers just extended Omar Khan for 3 years, gave him a new 3-year contract. And there's a lot of people out there that say Omar Khan, his teams, now granted, he has only been on the job like a full 2 off seasons and regular seasons, but they've never won a playoff game. What is, in your opinion, like what should be the sign or the signal or the criteria for a general manager to be able to say to the ownership, look what I've done, this is why I deserve more time? What is that in your opinion?
The organization's improving. And different franchises have different timetables for that improvement. And so it's going to vary on a franchise by franchise basis, but you have to be able to show positive growth, predominantly, I think, with your record, but just with the decisions that have been made, with the culture. You have to be moving forward. You think about like the Detroit Lions, when they paired up Dan Campbell and their GM just slipped my mind, but they went 3-13-1 their first year. But nobody panicked, nobody freaked out, because there was this sense that Dan Campbell's creating a great culture in Detroit. And then they went 9-8, and then 12-5, and then 15-2. They've just gotten better and better every year with that partnership. So
Brad Holmes, by the way.
Thank you. That's exactly what it is. Yep, Brad Holmes. So they have to, you got to be able to show. Now, has Chicago shown that? I mean,
that's my next question.
I can't quote their record off the top of my head, but they feel like a team that underachieved last year after they loaded up in the offseason with a lot of free agent signings, and then they brought in Williams as the number 1 overall pick, and they got off to a pretty good start. I think they were 4-2, and then they dropped 6 in a row, and Eberflus lost the clubhouse, and it just seemed to be dysfunctional Chicago Bears again.
They finished last year 5-12, 4th place in the NFC North.
Yeah, and at one point they had a winning record early in the year.
Some point, the Bears fans will say that the turning point was the Hail Mary against Washington that went the other way, and obviously they just went. It was a downward spiral from there. Okay, well, let's do the same thing with Omar Khan and the Steelers general manager. Has he done enough to warrant a 3-year extension for the Steelers?
I think it's a very different situation, and the answer is yes, because he inherited a Pittsburgh team that was transitioning out of the Ben Roethlisberger era into a new franchise quarterback, which the Steelers have not yet landed.
Right. And
in doing so, most teams wind up with a couple of years in the wilderness where they go 5-12. Steelers have not. They have not had. They made the playoffs the last 2 years. They made the playoffs with this poo-poo platter of bad to mediocre quarterbacks. and you can look at what Omar Khan, his approach has been. It's been unbelievably anti-Steelers. It's the bizarro Steelers as compared to what Kevin Colbert, how he operated. So I think he has breathed new life into the team. Obviously, he needs to land that franchise quarterback or his tenure will be short. But I think because of the results you're getting on the field, it was a justifiable extension.
Yeah, I agree. And let's stick with the Steelers talk. And this is not a Steelers show, but still, the next topic we wanted to discuss is the Steelers' contract situation with TJ Watt. And the question is, do you think Steeler fans should be worried about these negotiations between the Steelers and Watt and his overall status with the team? Coach, you've been following this as closely as I have. What's your takeaway from what we're hearing amongst these, I wouldn't say turbulent, but it's definitely rocky waters in my opinion?
I think Twitter is doing what Twitter does, and that we're still in the kind of dead time of the year, and there's not a lot of news, and people are drumming stuff up. It feels as though the Steelers are, yes, going through their due diligence with all of this, and they probably have a number, and the guaranteed money is probably an issue, the length of the contract's probably an issue, and those numbers don't match TJ Watt's numbers, and now you got this negotiation period and this mini game of chicken that they're going to play, like who's going to blink first. But I would be shocked. I'd be shocked if they don't get a deal done and if TJ Watt is not in the starting lineup on week 1, because he's a guy who I think at the end of the day, more than anything else, wants to play football. And obviously the Steelers don't want to overpay, but I do think that they recognize how important he is to their success and that they got to give him market value. And market value, unfortunately, is a really big contract. And Pittsburgh, I think, ultimately, in the end, will probably wind up swallowing a little more than they want to. But I'll be shocked if it doesn't get done.
Do you think that it gets done during camp, or we're talking after camp breaks before week 1, like it did in 2021, where he signed right before their week 1 game in Buffalo?
This feels like it may last a while. Just from the... Yeah, do you agree with that? Just from everything we're reading, right?
Yeah, I could also see Omar Khan operates a little different. When you think about other contract negotiations he's dealt with, even Deontay Johnson, I know that that's not a great example, but that happened earlier. He signed Minkah Fitzpatrick to his contract that he was most recently on before he was traded earlier than expected. I could see Omar Khan saying to TJ Watt and his agent, look, what do we got to do to get this thing done? I want him at practice. I want him playing in the games. I don't want this hanging over the head of the organization anymore. I don't want it to be a cloud. Let's get this deal done. And so I could see it being done by preseason week 2. We'll put it that way. Maybe.
That would be ideal. He doesn't need a lot of time, but give him 2 weeks. If he gets 2 weeks of training camp, he'll be fine.
I agree. Now, I do want to ask you, though, do you think when a player is going through these negotiations, and so TJ Watt is beloved by the Steelers fan base, and the Steelers and all NFL fans across the board, they support the team. They root for the Steelers. They don't root for the Pittsburgh TJ Watts. And so a lot of times they will always side with the organization. Do you feel like the Steelers fan base is slowly starting to turn on Watt a little bit? I mean, on Twitter, which is a pretty toxic place in and of itself, you do see people saying, you know what, screw this guy, let's trade him. Is the tide starting to turn in this regard?
I don't think so. Amongst the broader fan base, maybe the keyboard warriors, they're gonna be quick to voice their displeasure. But those are the people who are quick to voice their displeasure with everything. They are happy to be unhappy.
Well, and also the first time TJ Watt sacks Lamar Jackson in the backfield, they're not going to say, this guy's a bum, we should have traded him. They're going to be jumping up and down, whether it's in the stadium or at their house. So keep that in the back of their minds. All right, let's go to our next topic. There's 5 high-profile NFL teams that have never won a Super Bowl. We're talking the Buffalo Bills, Minnesota Vikings, Cincinnati Bengals, Detroit Lions, and the Los Angeles Chargers. Will one of these teams break its streak this season? And if so, which one? So I'll recap those. It's the Bills, Vikings, Bengals, Lions, and Chargers. Coach, what say you?
Well, those are some pretty good franchises. I mean, when you look at it like that, it's kind of shocking that none of them have ever won a Super Bowl. I'm going to say it won't be the Chargers because I just don't think that they're there yet. I mean, I think Harbaugh is building a tougher team in LA, but I'm not convinced that they're there yet, especially in a really competitive AFC. I don't think it'll be the Bengals. I just don't think they're good enough on defense to be able to win down the stretch, which gives you Buffalo, Minnesota, Detroit. All 3 of those teams, I think, have a shot to win a Super Bowl. Detroit's got to overcome some major losses, so I might be the least optimistic about those 2 teams. I think Minnesota is sneaky good. I think their defense is going to be excellent. J.J. McCarthy's the X factor, though. We don't really know about him just yet, so you have to land on Buffalo. They've been so close. It feels like Josh Allen's going to win a Super Bowl. It just feels like he needs to win a Super Bowl. If he doesn't, he's going to join Dan Marino as the greatest quarterback to never win one. So and the poor people of Buffalo, my goodness, the weather's terrible. You know, I mean, you've been to the brink of it for 4 straight years, and never since. You can't get past Mahomes in Kansas City. I mean, if there's a God in the universe, then God should make it happen. Bills win the Super Bowl.
Okay, so I'm going to say no to the Chargers as well. You've got players that are having eye injuries due to 4th of July fireworks and stuff. No. I'm going to say no to the Bengals with the same reason you did, and that is the defense is going to have to win a couple games, and I don't think they're capable. Minnesota, I'm going to say no. Because unlike Sam Darnold, who they were able to really turn him into something last year, a high-profile free agent that goes to Seattle, he at least had NFL experience that he could kind of lean into. He'd been through it with the Jets. You know, he went down to Carolina and suffered through a lot of stuff there, and then he gets a great coach that can put him in a great position. And I think J.J. McCarthy will be fine. I just don't think the year that they win it, if they're going to win it, is this year. It's essentially his rookie year. Yes, he played at Michigan. It's a high-profile team. They won a national title his senior year. I'm not discrediting any of that. I just can't put money on it if I were a gambling man. Buffalo is a cursed franchise. I will never bet for them to win anything. They will always find a way to choke, whether it's the officials getting in the way, a la last year's bad spot with the tush-push type thing. So I'm going to go with the Lions. I think the Lions right now, and Dan Campbell is a coach that he hears what everyone's saying. You lost both of your coordinators. You all can't do it. Yeah, and he is going to drum this up so hard for this team, and he's already a master motivator.
Yeah.
I think Detroit has a great roster. If they can get Aiden Hutchinson back even close to what he was before his leg injury, that defense is going to be better. They need their defense to be better. I think their offense is still going to be electric. I'm going to go with Detroit. I'm going to take the Lions. And then that would make your son happy, isn't he, a Lions fan?
My son would be thrilled. Absolutely thrilled. My son the Lions play at Philadelphia this year on a Sunday night. And my son wants us to get tickets to go. And I'm like, you don't understand what you'd be walking into as a Lions fan on a Sunday night. That would be a new level of animosity I think he's ever dealt with.
He would see Eagles fans all lubed up already from a day of drinking.
Yes,
that would
indeed.
be ugly. That would be ugly. All right, so speaking of if I were a gambling man, you know, that you talk about across the sport landscape, Luis Castillo most recently with the Cleveland Guardians, and I'm sure you heard about that issue and their investigation that's going on. It brings up a larger question. I talked with Pez of Pez's Picks on our podcast last week about this. I wanted to get your take. Do you think gambling in fantasy sports has in any way impacted the integrity of sport? In this case, we'll talk football, but we can also talk from a broader sense. Coach, what do you think?
I don't know if it has significantly, but it's starting to creep in. I mean, first of all, the fact that you can bet whether or not a pitch is a ball or a strike is absurd because that's so easy to fix, right? How easy is that to fix? Yeah. I mean, if you get a crooked pitcher. So there's got to be some better parameters placed upon the actual things that you can bet on. Right now, it seems like there's nothing you can't bet on. As to whether or not it's compromised the integrity of the game, I think football is a much tougher game to try to compromise because it's the least individualistic. Unless you can compromise a quarterback, right, or a coach. Otherwise, you just have all these moving pieces. You got 22 players on the field together. It seems really hard to fix a football game. I don't even know where I'd begin, quite honestly.
Well, I think personally, you know where I'm going to go. It's to the officials. That's where you fix the game. You have them throw that phantom flag.
We had that in the NBA.
Yeah, you have the spot be like, wait, what? They spotted the ball there? Are you kidding me? Oh, we have reviewed it, and there's not enough video to overturn it. You know, stuff like that. Also, I would go with the individual route. You talked about quarterback, but quarterback would be so obvious, I feel. Quarterbacks aren't trained to throw to the other team. And so if you're doing it intentionally, it would look like, well, Neil O'Donnell and Super Bowl 30. But I'm not going to open up that can of worms. I'd also say a kicker. You could get a kicker, and you could say, listen, you just need to miss a couple extra points. There are bets, Coach, where it is, will an extra point be missed or made? And you could, hey, you know a kicker? Hey, I'll give you this amount of money. It's the same bet as the duration of the national anthem of the Super Bowl. I've always wondered, what if someone knows the person that's singing or is in that circle? Hey, can you just hold that last note a little bit longer? We just need, and I think a lot of sports books have taken that off of the menu for bets. There's got to be some type of legalization here. I mean, it's legalized, but it's kind of like the Wild West where people can bet on whatever they want. In the third inning, Luis Castillo is going to throw a ball with his first pitch. That's insane to me.
Insane, yes. There has to be parameters on that. Because, right, insider trading is illegal on the stock market.
Yeah.
But it happens all the time. So there's just something similar going on in betting. But if you created a more uniform set of things that you could bet on, it would probably be a little bit tougher to try to fix it.
I'm sure. All right, let's finish this up with a player profile. It's a guy that recently announced his retirement, Ndamukong Suh. I'll let you go first, Coach. What do you think about the boy named Suh?
Kind of an enigmatic player throughout his career. When he came out of Nebraska, and in those early years where he was playing for the Lions, I just thought he was going to reinvent the defensive tackle position. He was so big and so athletic and so explosive. It looked like he was going to be a surefire Hall of Famer. But a couple injuries and then just a bunch of run-ins with his coaches. He just was never, he didn't, as coaches like to say, he never really took to coaching. He never really absorbed the lessons that coaches were trying to impart or even fellow teammates. And it just didn't seem like he got any better. He just kind of, whether it was stubbornness or I don't know what else, but he just wasn't willing to become the best version of himself. So he winds up having a nice NFL career, but I always felt like there's a guy who never reached his full potential.
All right, so Ndamukong Suh, who was drafted in 2010, played for the Lions, the Dolphins, the Rams, the Buccaneers, and finished his career in 2022 at the Eagles. When you think of his career, what jersey is he wearing?
Lions.
Lions? I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. But he did have a couple good years, especially in Tampa. I think he won did he win a Super Bowl with them?
He might have been on that Brady team.
I agree with what you said. Very odd career when you go back and look at it. And he had issues with, like anger. That people said he was just an angry guy. I don't know. He was a big dude. He was powerful.
Big dude.
And something that you would probably love to have on your team, but hate if you had to go against him a bunch. So
when he was at Nebraska, he looked like a man playing against boys. I mean, he was wrecking people. You know who he kind of reminded me a little bit of? I don't think he was quite this bad, but he reminded me of Albert Hainsworth. Do you remember Albert Hainsworth?
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, it just kind of, I think their career arcs were fairly similar.
Yeah, that's a good comp. That's what I was thinking in my head. I mean, Ndamukong Suh didn't step on someone's face like Albert Hainsworth did, but he had run-ins like that. But Coach, I want to give you an opportunity to plug what's coming up on your Call Sheet Daily podcast, because I know you have a really big show coming up. I want to let you do that now.
Yeah, so tomorrow on the show, my guest will be Cleveland Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski, which is pretty awesome to have an opportunity to talk to Coach Stefanski. I sat down with him about a year ago, and we talked quarterback play, and this time we're going to talk about the nature of being a head coach in the NFL, the 365-day nature of it, and how is it a year-round job? What all these teams are going to training camp now, and so people, I think, see that as the beginning of the season. But for head coaches, a lot of the work is already done. Now they get to the fun part. So how is the coaching season kind of broken down for an NFL head coach? And I'm sure he'll jump into some of the interesting stuff that the Browns have gone through over the last 6 months as well.
Yeah, I look forward to that. I know your conversation last year was held in a weight room, recorded on a cell phone. I think this will be a little bit better experience for those watching or listening, but still, I look forward to that. But Coach, as always, thank you for your time. We'll talk next week on another NFL Whip Round. Take it easy.
All right, thank you.